Hello everyone and welcome to the class. This is David Acox with TechTalkAmerica.com, and today we are going over Final Cut Pro. For those of you who don't know, Final Cut Pro has been one of my favorite pieces of software since it's been out. I myself started video editing at the age of 14 years old. It totally changed my life, and I hope to share some of that with you, some of that joy, because it is incredible when you can create content, and that's what this is. It's an amazing tool developed by Apple, and I love it. So this class, a couple of things that you need to know about this class before you take this class. First is that this is part one. There is a part two to this class. That part two will be coming out in a few months. It's going to take some time for me to work on it. And part two is going to be once you kind of master the basics, which is what we're going over today. Part two is where we get to really take things up a notch. And I'm 5'7", so I would have to jump to. Anyway, that's where we're going to be dealing with things like special effects. We're going to be dealing with plugins, all sorts of the little tools that takes Final Cut Pro from a good piece of software to an amazing piece of software. So I strongly recommend that you check it out no matter what kind of video you're shooting. I promise you there's something for everyone in that class too. This class was originally going to be a premium class, meaning we were going to originally charge $10 to watch it. We decided to go against that, and instead what we're going to do is in between the major segments, we are going to have a very quick commercial break. Just wanted you all to know that that's the reason why it's free. If you prefer to download this class or have it without any commercials, you can still buy it as a premium class. It'll be $5. You can get it right through TechTalkAmerica.com. And just go to the premium classes button there. One thing I always like to mention in my classes on this topic is the date, because things can change very quickly. Today's date is January 24th of 2017. Happy New Year, yay. So if you're watching this class in all seriousness and it's more than a year and a half into the future, you may want to consider seeing if we've come out with another class since then. Finally, oh, well, sorry, not quite finally, but almost finally, one of the things we are going to do to help you all out, and I strongly recommend it, is we are creating a PDF guide, which is free for everyone. So if you go into the notes section of this video, if you're watching us on YouTube, there's a little button that says like show more info, I think it is. It'll be in there. There's going to be a link to the PDF guide, and it's going to have a couple of different things that'll make this process much, much easier, because it is complicated software. First, we're going to include a list of all of the most important shortcuts. I've said this before, you can go to Barnes & Noble and you can buy a book on Final Cut Pro that's about this thick. Or you can download our PDF guide, which is like 3 pages long. So I tend to just give you what I think most people need, okay? Just the most digestible, it's like Cliff Notes for Final Cut Pro, if you will. So that will have shortcuts. It's also going to give you links to a lot of the products that I recommend if you're looking to get into production work. Some of you may or may not know this, but on the side, beyond Tech Talk America, I have a second brand that I developed. It's kind of more than anything for fun, and I shoot these short films. And a lot of the equipment that I use is my iPhone. And I have these little accessories that go with it that just kind of take it up a notch. So a lot of that, equipment, links to all that, you'll find that all in the guide as well. So I hope you enjoy that. So without any further ado, here it is, Final Cut Pro 2017. Coming up next on TechTalkAmerica.com.
All right, folks, I think we are about ready to begin, and the first place that I would like to start today has to do with just very quickly going over preferences located within Final Cut Pro. So let's start there. We're going to go up to where it says Final Cut Pro at the top left and go into Preferences, which is the second item down. And really here, I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. Okay, so there's just a couple of very quick things that we're going to go over here. Under Editing, these two bottom items here. Still images, this is just basically when you import an image into your project. If you're going to do something like the Ken Burns effect, how long do you want that image to be by default? You can change this, of course, but by default, what do you want that to be? Also, transitions. When you're going from one shot to the next, how long do you want to take it to transition if you're going to be doing something like a cross dissolve? My advice is 1 second. Here under Playback, Okay, this is really important. This is one of the areas of Final Cut Pro that has dramatically changed over the years. Back in the day, I've been editing for about 14 years now. Whenever you would make a little teeny tiny change, you had to manually tell the computer to process that change, and it took forever to get anything done. So now what it does is it will start to render things in the background. And for those of you who are already confused on terminology, let me just go over this real quickly. So what is rendering? Rendering is processing, okay? It's putting together what is that image. An example, excuse me, I just coughed and that sounded like a gasp. An example of this would be, let's say I want to make my footage black and white, okay? I could apply a filter to it, and that's going to have to process. It's going to have to render that. Another example would be if I speed up or if I slow down my footage, if I color correct it, if I add transitions. There's a whole bunch of different things that fall into this category, but my advice is that you have it start this process as quickly as possible. So you can see here, I waste no time, 0.3 seconds. FYI, you cannot use these little arrows to hit that number. You have to actually click into it, and you can manually punch in 0.3. Okay? Then we have the last item that I want to go over here in preferences. This is really critical, folks. This right here, files. There are two different ways that you can store files in Final Cut Pro. You can either tell it to copy the footage, the files, okay, to the library file, or you can tell it to leave them in place. The reason why this first option here is dangerous is because if you start this process and you end up really using this software, like you really get into Final Cut Pro, the problem here is that you are going to incredibly quickly bloat the size of that file. It's going to take up a giant portion of your hard drive, and moving all of your files from like a local library to an external library is not such an easy process. So my advice is leave the files in place and create your own file structure. And I'm going to show you actually how I use mine. So let's go over that real quick. Okay, we're back on my desktop now. This right here is my external hard drive. Now, if you're really not going to be doing a lot of video editing, you will find examples of the hard drives that I tend to recommend in the PDF guide that we're going to give you. Please note, there is one brand that I tend to kind of warn people about just because they seem to have an incredibly high fail rate, which are LaCie. The brand LaCie, it's not the actual drive that fails. It's the internal components. I've found, I used to have a client of mine who had 15 of them that failed. Incredible. I'm like, why did you buy 15 of them? Oh well. Anyways, so if you're looking for an external hard drive, you'll find a few of the recommendations that I tend to make in the PDF guide. But if you are looking to really get into this stuff, okay, like at the level that I'm at or more, then you might want to consider going something a little bit more heavy duty. This is what I use. This is called the Drobo. And if you would like some free consulting about a Drobo, provided that you're willing to use my little link when you go to buy it, I'm happy to do it for you. You can shoot me an email, dac@talkamerica.com. Just make the subject line Drobo consultation. And make sure you include your phone number, email address, and kind of a general idea of what your needs are, and I'll do my best to get back to you as quickly as I can. So what does my drive look like? Well, I keep all of my various projects in folders located within Footage Drive. Okay, so these are examples of some of the projects that I've worked on over the years. Okay, they're all here. These are, by the way, since some of you may be wondering what are these things, I actually have a second brand that I've developed over the last couple of years called Droning Provincetown. And basically, I fly an aerial drone. I've been doing it for a couple of years now, and I make these very elaborate videos of the various theme weeks where I live, which is at the very, very tip of Cape Cod. So the footage that we're going to be using today is actually from one of these. So what I do is I create a folder for each individual project, okay? And then I go into each of that and I import all of the footage, okay? Any photos, music, and I just make sure that all of that stuff is in one location, okay? So provided that you do something similar to that and you tell it to leave the files in place, you will be all good to go. That is preferences. So from here, what we're going to do is we're going to start to go through the process of creating a video. And so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a library, then an event, and then a project, and then we're going to import. Okay? So we're going to go here to File and New. We're going to create a new library. And I'm just going to call this Demo. okay? You can tell that I've actually done this a couple of times. Actually, you know what? I have one already open, so let's actually open up that library instead. It's called Dummy. This is not take one of this project, folks. So when you are within your library, this over here is your library. Within your library, you're going to have things called an event. And within an event, you're going to have something called a project. I'd like to go over brief terminology here, just because I'm sure a few of you, your heads just exploded, so I'd like to put Humpty Dumpty back together again. Okay. What is an event? An event is basically a fancy word for saying a folder, okay? So let's say I am creating a movie, okay? An event could be Act 1, Scene 1, okay? And then another scene would be another event. The project, though, this is the project, okay? That is the actual edit. So that would be the movie itself, presuming it's going to be all in one file. Okay, so just wanted to go over that definition real quickly with you. So if we're going to create a new event, we're going to go to File, New, Event. I'm going to call it Winter. It's going to ask you, where is this event going to be stored? It's going to be within the library of Dummy. And if you want, with just one checkbox right here, which I believe by default it is set to be that, you can have it create a new project at the same time, which makes sense. Now, for the settings for your video, you can either have it be automatic based on the first clip that you go to use, or you can customize it. So example of custom settings, you can switch it, between 4K, 1080p, whatever you want. You can choose your frame rate. Just a kind of a good thing to know about frame rate, okay? The slower the frame rate, the more cinematic it's going to look. The higher the frame rate, the more smooth it's going to look. So this is the example that I've always given over the years. If you look at television, okay, a movie looks different than a soap opera. Okay, typically with a soap opera, it's very, very, very warm. It's very, very flowy. I don't know if that's a word, but that's what I'm going to say. Okay, so you'd think higher number better, right? Well, it's actually the opposite. Usually the different projects that I'm creating, I do all in 24p, and depending on what it is I'm working with, the resolution I'll put at, in this case, we're dealing with 4K footage today, so I'm going to leave it at 4K. But the slower the frame rate, the more cinematic it's going to end up looking in the end. Okay, and for your audio, I just say usually keep that at automatic, unless you know what you're doing, and then hit OK. Okay, so Winter right here, Winter is the event, Untitled Project, that is the project. Now let's start to import our footage, and there's a few different ways you can do this. You can actually just drag it and drop it in if you like, or you can go to right here, this little arrow pointed down, or Command-I, or File Import, really whatever you want. So I have created a little folder here with some default footage. One of these files here is corrupted, so don't be surprised when it gives me some sort of an error window. And notice over here, once again, just to reiterate, files leave in place. Do not import them, or do not move them into the library. Oh, I thought one of those videos was corrupted. I guess not. So here I have my various pieces of footage. That's, by the way, really as easy it is to import footage. Now, if you have things like music or photos that you want to bring in, if the music and photos are in iTunes or Photos, you don't actually need to import them because you can do it right through Final Cut. You don't need to go through the import process like we just did. There's another way to do it. Okay, so for example, if you want to bring in something like music, let's go over here to this icon right here, okay? This is going to switch it up, and now we can access whatever photos are in the Photos library, whatever music is in iTunes. Also, if you are more musically talented than I, which would probably be most of you, you can access GarageBand projects or sound effects, okay? This can take a minute for your computer to load. Your computer does come with a ton of sound effects, believe it or not. These can actually take up a decent amount of space. But if you ever need a sound effect, it's worth your time to kind of go through here and just check out the list. And if you want, what I would recommend you do is that you sort this by genre, okay? So Foley would be an example of a sound effect, okay, like bubbles. But then also they have jingles. Let me just say something about jingles. They can be really, really cheesy, okay? And these tend to be overused a lot. So if you want your project to stand out, there's an alternative that I'm going to bring up now. So what I wanted to do is just take a moment to throw a recommendation your way and just kind of clarify something. And please understand, I'm not a lawyer, okay? So you proceed at this point at your own risk. I want to talk about the legality of using music, okay? If you are not making money from your project, whatever it is, and let's say you're going to post it on something like YouTube or Facebook, okay, the odds of the artist coming after you for doing that, which is technically not legal, are very, very slim, okay? They want to go after the big dogs. If you're getting paid to make a project, something like that, in that case, you do need rights to that particular piece of music. Now, if you are looking for music that you can use legally for whatever project it is, there is a website that I really strongly recommend. I use it all the time for my various projects. And I'm just going to say a very quick request. All right. This class you're taking for free. Okay. You're not paying anything to take this. I would greatly appreciate it if you do use my link. It is an affiliate link, so I get a small kickback if you do use this. But that being said, I would never recommend anything to you that I don't actually use myself. So there's a website called Audio Jungle, and they have tons of music that's available. For a lot of the various drone projects that I have created over the years, sometimes I will go through literally 800 pieces of music to find the perfect song. And one of the things that I have discovered is that there's a lot more, excuse the language, crap out there than good stuff. So there's one musician in particular, and I've used this guy's music time after time. He's really, really talented. If you would like to check him out, his name is Adi Goldstein, and his name under Audio Jungle is Adigold, or whatever. Adi Gold, whatever. But I'll give you a direct link in the PDF guide to his stuff, and he makes music for all different genres. So if you're looking to do a project and put it online, and you don't want to worry about that stuff, you can buy rights to that music, and it's pretty damn cheap compared to what it would cost if you were going to go through like a record label. The next thing we're going to be doing now is importing the footage from the event that we just created into this down here. We'll go over this in a moment. So we're going to click over here, this little icon, just so we can get back to our event. And if you want, what you can actually do at this point, because all of our footage is in this one event, you can actually click this again and just really utilize the entire screen. See how it kind of hides everything there? Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through our footage, and we're going to just kind of pick out the best moments, and we're going to start to bring this in down here. Now this box right here, and please forgive me, I always screw up the language here, okay? This whole area is referred to as the timeline, I believe, and this black bar is the storyline. The terminology is not important in this case. Let me just give you an example where it might be important that you just kind of understand the differences between where you're placing footage here. This black bar here, okay, let's say I'm doing some sort of a, you know how they do like a weather report, and then they'll, show footage of trees falling down and hail falling, that kind of thing. So this would be the actual reporter. So this would be me on camera saying, things have gone to hell here in Provincetown, Massachusetts, it's snowing. And then the clips that I place above it, these would be your B-roll, okay? That's what they call that kind of footage. So it would be footage of snow falling, hail, whatever it may be, okay? Anything below the storyline, this is where your audio is going to go. So it could be, for example, extracted audio from the clip itself. It could be music. It could be sound effects. But all of your audio is going to go on down here below the border. All right. So let's start the process of going over and importing the footage into the actual storyline and timeline. Okay. So the way that I like to do this, and once again, there are many, many ways to do it, okay, is I like to just kind of go through roughly and pick out where I want the shot to approximately start, where I want it to approximately end. You don't have to get it dead on because you can always correct it later. And I just kind of start to assemble very, very basic stuff right off the bat. This is a horrible metaphor, warning, okay? The way that I describe the edit process would be like slaughtering a cow, okay? You do the initial hack, right? And then you start to trim it down, you trim it down, you trim it down, you refine it, and you get it to the point where it's that perfect filet mignon, okay? I'm sure the people at PETA are, losing their crap over that. But that's how I like to describe the process. Now you'll notice as I move my cursor over this footage, okay, it's giving me a preview over here, and that's what this is called. This is the preview window. We'll go over these other windows when we get there, okay? So don't worry about it. So what I like to do is I'm going to give you a shortcut at this point, okay? And we're going to first talk about setting your in points and setting your out points. So an in point would be the approximate moment that you want the clip to start, and the out point, you guessed it, is where you want it to end. This is where shortcuts are really, really helpful. So just think, in and out, I and O. So when you see that approximate moment where you want the clip to start, like let's do right there, okay? This is a couple weeks ago. I'm going to tap on the letter I, and you'll notice that when I do that, see how this little yellow box around it, see how it changed right there? Okay, so it's telling the computer this is approximately where the clip is going to start. Now, anytime I want to just play the video and see how it's looking, what I can do is I can tap on the space bar, and you see this, the little red line that's kind of following along, okay? That is basically the playhead, and the playhead, this is actually the playhead here, okay? But this is, as I move through, I can skim through the footage and see what it looks like at different moments in time, okay? So let me just kind of hit play and see approximately where this shot is going to end, and when I do want it to end, I'm going to tap the O key. All right, so we're playing, we're going up. Okay. By the way, if you would like to see the how this video actually looks when it's done, I'll put a link to that as well in the description of the video in the PDF guide. So that looks like a good moment for where this clip can end. So I'm going to tap the O key, and you can see right there, now that yellow box is right there. Now what we're going to do is we're going to bring it from here down to here. And there's a couple of different ways you can do it. You can drag it and drop it. If you like to do that, absolutely go for it, drag it and drop it. But I would like to give you my favorite shortcut key to do this, which is the letter E. Now what the letter E is going to do is it's going to put it at the end of the project. Okay, so I just tapped it there, and there it is. So as I go through here, let's find a few other little shots here, okay? So let's do, there's a shot here where I move forward right here. So I'm going to hit my I key to set the in point. We're going to play by tapping the space bar. That PDF guide is going to be really helpful for these shortcuts, I promise you. Okay, that looks nice and pretty. I'm going to pause by tapping the space bar again, hit the O key, set another out point, and once again, hit the letter E, and that puts it at the end of the project. So currently, this goes from this shot, if I play it, and it's just going to cut. Okay, it's going to go from that shot, cut. We have that shot there too. Okay. By the way, a lot of the shortcut keys that I'm going to give you today also work in iMovie. Not all of them, but quite a few of them do. Now, there are a couple of other ways that you can import footage into your timeline, storyline, whatever. Okay, so I want to go over those real quickly. There are a total of 4 different keys that you can use. I'm just going to tell you up front so that you don't freak out. E is usually what I end up doing, okay? But I just feel like it's important to go over the others, okay? The next one we're going to talk about real quickly, I'm just going to move the playhead at this moment. I'm going to move it in between these 2 shots, okay? The next one we're going to be talking about is Q, and technically Q means connect to primary storyline. So let me just find an example here, okay? Let's see. We got a shot, which is kind of a long shot just here through town. So I'm going to hit the I key, play. And when we're done, we're going to tap O. Okay. And now Q, so you can see what that does. So what this has done is it has essentially added this shot as B-roll. That's the equivalent of what it's doing. So it's just going to put it above this clip here. Now you'll notice anytime you have something above a clip, this clip is not going to get seen, okay? It's the same thing as basically cutting it. But when you're editing, you don't have to be necessarily clean with your edit. It doesn't have to be one perfect line here, okay? It can look as messy as you want. Many of my projects will look to the naked eye as being very, very messy. But it just means that I'm not using this shot at this time. So that's what Q does, okay? Let me just delete it so I can show you with that same shot. Let me show you what the other options are here. Okay, the next one is W. And what W is going to do is it's going to insert it where the playhead is, okay? So watch this. So you can see what it did is this used to be one clip. These 2 shots were one clip. And because the playhead was in the middle, it is essentially created a splice, okay? So that now that clip is in between those 2 shots. I don't find that personally to be that helpful. That's why I don't ever use it. And then we have D. So D is a little, D and W are very, very similar, okay? But what D is going to do is it's going to override this footage altogether, okay? So watch this. When I hit D, oops, sorry. I have to put my playhead here. D. So see, it didn't create any splice. It just wrote over it. That's what that does. So those are your key commands that you need to know just as far as bringing footage into your project. This is officially going to be probably the shortest segment ever in any of my classes. Just really important to go over. If you make a mistake, you need to know how to go back in time. Undo is Command Z, as it is with virtually almost every single app on the Mac. And to go forward in time, like let's say I go back a few changes, oops, I need to go forward, okay? Command Shift Z is redo, and the more times you tap it, the more steps you'll go forward in time. What I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to just very quickly throw together a few more shots so we have a little bit more to work with here, and then we'll go over more of the principles of basic editing. So now you can see I've just kind of thrown together a couple of extra clips here so we have a little bit more to work with, and I want to go over a few other principles of editing. First one I want to talk about is how to trim clips, and there are, once again, a couple of different ways to do this. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom into my project here. It's hard for me to kind of describe this to you, so I'm going to do the best I can. I'm using a laptop right now. A lot of you at home probably are as well, or maybe you have the Magic Trackpad. So to zoom into your project, what you're going to do is you're going to do the same thing you would do on Safari. Okay, you start 2 fingers on your trackpad in the middle together, and then you're going to spread them apart. And when you do that, it's going to zoom in. Okay, so just basically what this is going to do is we're zooming into time. So the amount of time from here to here, is only not even a second. Okay, whereas if I pull backwards the other way, okay, now this little movement, this right here is about a minute. Okay, so I'm gonna zoom into my project here a little bit, okay, and just so we can start to go over the other things. So this shot here, okay, currently ends this way. I'm gonna hit the play space bar so you can see. So it ends right there. What if I want it to end a little bit sooner? There are 2 different ways that you can do this. The first is to use the blade tool. The second is to just simply drag it back. So the blade tool actually looks like a blade, and the way you can trigger it is you can tap the letter B as in boy. Now the other way to get it is right here. Okay, this is one way that you can switch between the different tools here. So we're going over blade and trim, which I just went over in opposite order. Blade, trim. Okay, so with blade I can click, okay, and what it just did is it just separated these into 2 different clips. Now, one thing that you need to be aware of is that if you go to use the blade tool, you need to know how to switch back to an arrow, because otherwise you're just going to keep cutting, okay? Arrow is A. So tap A, see how my cursor goes from a blade to an arrow. So now this is 2 different clips right now. Okay, so now theoretically I could hit delete and it's gone. I'm going to undo that so I can show you the other method though. The other method is to simply trim it. And the way you can do that is you can click on your clip, and if I put my cursor here at the very end, see how it changes just like that? What I can do now is I can click and I can drag it back, and you'll see as I start to drag it, see how it gives me the time above? Okay, so the first number is the total length of that particular clip. It's 12 seconds, 12 frames. And the second number there is I'm shortening it by 1 second and 3 frames. Okay, so just by doing that. By the way, the other way that you can zoom in, for those of you who are on like a desktop and don't have a Magic Trackpad, which I do recommend, is to use the Z key, and you can click. Okay, so you can click and it'll zoom in. Okay, just like that. Let's get out of that and go back to A. Okay, the next thing I want to do is go over how to disable a clip. So let's say I'm going to just temporarily move this clip above. Okay. And let's say I'm currently going from this shot to this shot, but you know what? I want to see what it would look like if it just goes from here to this shot instead. One of the things that you need to know how to do in editing is how to disable. So you're basically creating, you're making it transparent essentially, so that the computer's going to skip over this shot right here. The way that you can disable any clip, and this applies to both video and audio, is to just tap the V key. So you can see when I do that, it kind of grays it out like that. So it's as if that clip doesn't exist. The reason why you would use disable instead of delete is you're still kind of playing with things. You want to see how it's going to work this way. And if ultimately when I'm done, if it just looks better going from this shot to this shot and I don't even need this one, at that point I could just delete it, but it doesn't harm to just leave it there disabled. So the V key will enable or disable any clip, audio or video. The next one I want to go over is snapping. So snapping, you'll notice here that as I kind of move my cursor, see how the playhead is going to, ultimately it's going to kind of snap to certain locations like in between shots, okay? That's a feature that I really like, but not everyone does. So for example, if I want to, insert this, I want to make this start right there. See how it just kind of, boom, it just goes right there. It's like a magnet, okay? That is this right here. It's this right here, or you can use the N key if you like. So you'll see here, if I disable it, okay, and I go to move it, it's anything goes. I can get it close, but I may not get it dead on, okay? So that is snapping, which I would recommend you just simply turn on. The next little technique that I wanted to show you is something that I use a lot in my videos. I don't know, honestly, how many of you are going to use this, but I figure enough of you that it's worth going over, which is how to set marks. And basically, all a mark is, it's a notation to the editor that this is a moment to check out, okay? So you can use this with video or you can use it with audio. Personally, I only really use it with audio. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get out of full screen here because I actually have it hidden on a window beneath it. This is what I'm talking about. There's multiple ways to import stuff. This is the file that we're going to be using, and I'm just going to literally drag it and drop it. Oops. Drag it and drop it right here into Final Cut Pro. It imports it. All done. Okay? So this green bar represents the audio. By the way, this is the guy I was chatting about earlier. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through it and I'm going to play it just to see how it sounds. And every single time I hear like one of those little moments where it's like this could be a good moment to transition to a different shot, I'm going to tap the M key. You're going to see these little blue markers appear on the green bar there. So let's do this, okay? Should be enough, right? And the thing is, you don't have to use these, but it's just kind of a good thing if you're going to be doing some sort of a music type video. The next thing I want to do is I want to show you something about just dealing with audio levels in general. Now, we don't have any dialogue here, but what I'm going to show you applies to dialogue as well, okay? So we're going to zoom into the screen at this point so you can really see this. So there is a bar that is going through each clip, okay? See that thin line? It's right there on that clip. It's right there on that clip. And it says 0 dB if I have it here. That's 0 decibels. So it's just, that's the audio the way it is out of the can. Now you can boost or reduce the audio if you like. And you can do that by simply putting your cursor on that little bar and click and drag up as many as 12 decibels or down to mute if you like. There's another way to do mute if you like, but whatever you want. One of the things to look out for is you see, for example, over here, see how there's some red in there? Okay, you don't want red. You don't, really don't want much yellow. Some yellow's okay. Just you really don't want to get into the, orange or red state because at that point it's just going to distort on, whoever's watching it on their speakers. It's not going to sound good. The other thing that you can do here is I want to show you how to fade. Okay, now there's two different ways to fade it. I'm going to show you first how to fade it from the beginning or ending, and then actually later on I'm going to show you how to transition so that, let's say, if it's a whole piece of music, there might be a section that needs to come down a bit. I want to show you how to kind of create custom points where you can make it, go up a little bit or go down a little bit. So if you wanted to fade in, okay, if you look over here right towards the beginning of that clip, I'm going to have to zoom way, way in when I'm editing this. Okay, see that little green circle dot thing there? Okay, you're going to grab that and if you drag it to the right, in this case, see how it now says plus 5:13? So that means it's going to take 5 seconds and 13 frames to go from mute to the volume that I have it set at, okay? So you can make this as short or as long as you want. Typically, you want it to be brief, but you don't want it to be too fast or too low, depending on what you're dealing with here, okay? And you will find those dots at the beginning and end of every single clip when you put your cursor over it. See, if I put my cursor over here, it's right there. This clip doesn't have audio, so it's not going to do anything. But I just want you to see that you can fade in or fade out by grabbing that dot and just dragging it left or right. One of the things I want to show you how to do is how to detach audio from a clip. This isn't going to apply much to this project, but you may very well have a project where this is very important. So sometimes when you're dealing with video, you want just the audio. It doesn't matter if you have or don't have the video, but you want to separate the two so that they're not linked together. The way you do this on any clip is you're just going to simply click on it, and then you're going to secondary click on it. So if some of you know that as a right click, but it's right here, detach audio. And even if there is no audio, it'll still do it, just there is none. Okay, so now this is exclusively video, this is exclusively audio. The next thing I want to go over is how to move around shots. This is something that will absolutely drive some of you crazy if you don't master this right off the bat. There are 2 different ways that you can essentially move a clip, okay? And I'm going to give you an example right now. So this shot that I've got right here, okay, I want to put this back somewhere into my storyline. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag it, I'm going to drop it right in between these 2 shots. And you'll notice that when I do that, it pushed over all of these other shots to make room. Here's the thing, you're not always going to want that. For example, let me just reset this. Let's say that I have these shots synced to the beat of the music, okay? I don't want them to move. And when you're dealing with a lot of shots, it can be very easy to accidentally do this, okay? So there are 2 different ways to do this. If you tap the A key on your keyboard, okay, it will do what I just showed you. It's going to move things, it's going to shift things back so that you can put in your clip. The other way is program mode, okay? And to do that, it's the letter P, as in Paul. And so when I do that, watch what happens, okay? These clips aren't going to move. It's going to just override. See? Just like that. So if I had these all synced to the beat, they're going to stay synced. I don't have to worry about it. Next thing we're going over is transitions. Transitions is this window here at the bottom right. Now, if you don't see it here, it's this little bow tie. Okay, so if I click on the bow tie, it goes away. If I click on it, it comes back. So we have all sorts of different types of transitions here. By the way, you will notice on my computer, you will see some that you probably don't have on your computer. This is not my primary editing computer, okay? But so on my real computer, I have a lot more. But you will see some that look a little bit different. So the most common transition used is the first one here, which is cross dissolve. Okay, so it's going to go from shot A to shot B. You'll notice that if I even drag my cursor over it, it kind of gives me a general idea of what it's going to essentially do. So to add a cross dissolve to 2 shots, I'm going to just simply drag it and drop it in between 2 shots. Now, you don't have to do it in this form either. You can also do it at the beginning. So for example, right now the video just opens and it's just boom, it's just playing right off the bat. Well, a lot of people want it to fade in, so I can add a cross dissolve there. So here's an interesting thing. Cross dissolve is also fade up from or fade to black if there's nothing else there. If there's no other clips below it, that's what it's going to do. So now when I play, see how it just did that nice, it took 1 second to do the transition, okay, and now we're into our project. Now there are, this is scrollable, of course. We have tons of different types of transitions. The one little piece of advice, if I may give you, is don't go too crazy, folks. I know kids, for example, love to go crazy and have a different transition for every single shot. It's really easy to overuse this stuff. So I'd keep to the more simple ones like I always call it crossfade. It's cross dissolve. I sometimes will use Gaussian blur, which is down here below. Flash is really handy for any of you who might get into doing some sort of YouTube videos. Flashes are really, really good because they allow you to just very quickly go white and then you can cut and move around, do whatever you need. Fade to color is also very good. If you, for example, if you do have other clips there and you need to put in a layer of black or white, for example, if you want to fade to white, this would be another way to do it. So you just drag this in at the end, for example, to do that. Now, when you want to make that kind of change, that's where this window up here comes into play. This is the inspector, okay? The inspector is this icon right here. See it right here at the top right? Okay, so this is going to change based on whatever it is you're clicked on. In this case, I am clicked on a transition. So it's saying, what color do you want to, fade to? So if I don't want to do black, maybe I want to do white. Okay, I can pick out white here, and now, voila, we hit play. You can see it went to white. It then went to black afterwards because I didn't have anything after it. But that would be an example of a type of fade to color. There are several different effects that come with your Mac if you want to seriously kick things up a notch. And if you really, really want your projects to look insanely amazing, I'm going to strongly recommend that you check out part 2 of this class, okay? Because that's where we're going to really get into this stuff, and I'm going to show you some third-party ones that just make all the difference between your footage looking potentially amateur and really, really professional. So effects are right here. It's next to the bow tie, okay? And it just takes over the same window. We have 2 different types of effects. We have video and we have audio. So examples of audio would be like an echo or changing the modulation, the levels, that kind of thing. But here under video, we have different ones, like for example, and again, these are just the basic ones that come with your Mac, things like bad TV. So if I want to see how this looks, let me just get it set up here. Okay, I can actually, you'll notice if I put the playhead over a clip and then I just roll my cursor, it's going to kind of give me an idea of what it's going to look like. So it kind of gives it that wobble look. And then same thing for black and white. Okay, this is one way to go black and white. You don't have to do it through that method. And we have a whole bunch of other ones here. And like I said, some of them are great, but if you want really, really good ones, there's a better way to do it. And that's in part 2. One of the things I like to do for all of my videos is I like to do just a little bit of color correction, and it basically just kind of makes up for what nature didn't capture or didn't exist in the first place. So this is where you can start to change it so that it looks just a little bit better, okay? And that might mean increasing, making the colors a little bit more vibrant. This is one way to make it black and white, so I want to show you how to do that. So what you're going to do is you're going to pick your clip, and in my case, wow, winter is not the best time to color correct, is it? Okay, let's do one with a lot of sky. Let's do this shot here. Okay, so I'm going to click on the clip that I'm going to color correct. Okay, put the playhead there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to go over slowly, piece by piece, these 3 items right here, starting with this right here. So this is where you're going to get into your color options. We have balance color, which is sort of like a kind of smart, just try to figure out what's the best thing for it. Match color, in which case you can make it look like another clip in your project, in which case it'll just have you, kind of show it what clip you want it to mimic, or color board. This is true color correction. You can see here if you want to do the shortcut, it's Command 6. So let's go into color board, okay, and we have 3 tabs up here: color, saturation, and exposure. Personally, I don't do a lot here in color. This is where you can basically just kind of tweak certain aspects of it. So if I want to give it like a really freakish blue tint, I can make it, well, that actually doesn't look, I guess, that bad, but this will give it, as you can see there, a blue tint. Okay, and I can move it around. I can see how it looks with, a red tint. Terrible. Okay, this is a good point to use undo. Where we're going to really kind of hang out are these 2 right here, though: saturation and exposure. So within each of these, you'll see that we have these dots right here, and let me just kind of go over what these are. This one here on the left is global settings. Okay, so this is actually going to affect all 3 of these at the same time. I don't really use this a lot because usually I find that it's better to fine-tune it individually. And then we have the black, gray, and white. What these stand for: this is your shadows. So for example, in exposure, which is a better example for this, okay, you can see here if I kind of bring it down, it's going to take those dark points and it's going to make them really dark. If I pull it up, it's going to make them really, really light. So a lot of times here, it's just kind of about slightly fine-tuning this a little bit. You'll see it's telling me I've gone down by 5%, just a little bit. The next one is your midtones, okay? Do you want those to look, a little bit brighter, a little less? So these are your grays in your image, okay? And then over here we have your highlights. So these are your brightest parts. See how like the clouds there, they really distort as I go up? Okay? So I'm going to just kind of keep it. That actually looks pretty good right there. And then here under saturation, sorry, I know we skipped around there a little bit. Okay, similar deal. Okay, so with this, what I find tends to make pretty much every shot look just a little bit better is just to slightly improve all of these by bringing these up just a little bit. And understand with saturation, with any of these, if you drag them down, you are desaturating. What do you get when you desaturate? You ultimately get black and white. That's the other way to get black and white. Okay, so with this, let me just kind of bring it to what I tend to use. Okay, so we just really more than anything, I tend to improve the shadows more than anything. So we just get that, blue sky, where we have color, we want to try to, show it off there. Okay, and we're done with that. Now, I want to show you a trick that I accidentally left out of the last time I taught this class. The amount of time that it took to, do that for one shot, okay, well, that's not so bad. But if you've got a lot of shots, this can take forever. So I want to show you a really simple way to take any effect and apply it to multiple clips at the same time. So what we're going to do in this case is I'm going to actually, first let me take this clip here and just move it back in. I'm going to take, because these are all shot pretty much same location, essentially, same time, so you would not always do this. I'm going to take all of the effects from here and just mass apply to everything. So the way that you do this is you're going to click on the clip that you've already corrected or added effects to, whatever it may be, and you're going to copy it the way you would copy anything. Command C. Okay, so that copies it. And now what we're going to do is we're going to highlight just by clicking and dragging over these other clips. And we're going to do it's a little bit of a twist on paste. Okay, it's similar. It's Command Option V. So now if I kind of go back and skim, you'll see these all just got a lot brighter, a little bit more vibrant. You saw how quickly I was able to do that too. Let's do it for this shot too. Okay, that's your before. Let's apply it after. Pretty cool, right? That's a very noticeable difference that we only had to, correct once, and then we could just kind of apply it to every shot. Now, if if you're going to be a Hollywood filmmaker, you'd probably correct, these a little bit more, you'd refine it a little bit. But if you just want to make something and make it look good relatively quickly, this would be a better way to do it. Next thing we're going to be talking about, folks, is how to speed up or slow down footage. So to do this, we're going to click on whatever clip it is that we want to alter, and we're going to go up here to this little gear icon. It looks a little bit like a speedometer. Okay, these are your speed options. And as you can see here, it's pretty straightforward. You can slow it down, you can make it faster, you can set it to normal if you've already tweaked it, you can hold it. Also, this is where you can go to reverse the clip. So if I want, let's say I'm taking off, like for this clip here. Okay, if I want to, right with this clip, I'm taking off from the ground. If I want to make it look like I'm landing for whatever reason, okay, I could just click on that clip, go over here and hit reverse, and now it looks like I'm landing the drone, which looks a little weird because you can see people in the background walking in reverse. One thing that's important to understand about reverse, make sure there's no cars in the background because that's kind of a dead giveaway at that point. Let's undo that, okay? So if I want to make it, let's say I want to make it faster, okay? There's some default options here. 2 times faster, 4 times 8, 20. What if you want something in the middle? No worries. Let's just go with 2 in this case, okay? What I can do is I can zoom into this shot here and, oops, too much zoom, okay? See this purple bar here? I can grab that purple bar at the right, and if I move it to the left, what do you think that's going to do? Come on. That's going to make it faster. See how it's now changing the timing. Now it's 800% faster. Or if I stretch it the other way, let me zoom out a little bit so I have room to do that. It's going to slow it down. You'll notice that when you're slow, it's orange. When you're fast, it's kind of purplish. Okay, so that's how you tweak the speed. Next thing I want to go over are cropping options. So there's a couple of different ways that you can tweak your shots, and I want to show you an example of one. So what I've done is I just extended this clip so you could see there's actually a mistake that I made here. So let me play for you what this clip actually looks like. Okay, so we're flying along, and then what happened was I stopped, and when I stopped, the leg, see that over there at the left-hand side? That's the leg of my drone. Okay, got into the shot as I was pulling back. Okay, so this is probably not the best example, but I want to show you how you could theoretically get rid of that. Okay, and one way is to crop it. So we're going to click on the clip and we're going to go over here. This is where you're going to find these options, and there are basically 3 different ways to do it. It's actually a little bit more than that. We have transition, crop, and distort, and these can be a bit confusing, so I'm going to try to go through them. What is transform? Transform is basically you're gonna stretch it. Okay, so you're gonna do something with it. Now, if I click on one of these middle dots here, see how we have these blue dots now at all the corners? Okay, if I grab this middle one, it's gonna distort it. Okay, so it's gonna do that. So usually you're not gonna typically deal with the middle one, but if I grab one of the corner ones, let me actually get rid of the inspector here so we can really see what we're doing here. I can drag it down. Oops, sorry about that. Let's do it from down here. It's easier. And see how it stays in proportion. So one way that I could theoretically deal with this is I can just basically scale it up so that it's just a little bit bigger. See how I can just make the leg disappear off screen there. So it's just kind of a little cropped in like that. That is the first option that you see here, which is transform. The next one, let's just undo everything we did. Okay, the next one here is crop. What is crop? Well, basically, you're going to see now we have these dashed lines, okay? And so what we're going to do is we're effectively just cutting out the top. So let's say I want to make this ultra widescreen, okay? This is one way I could theoretically do this, okay? Filmed in CinemaVision or whatever they're calling it now. CinemaScope, is that it? I don't know. So this is one way that I could do it, okay? The other option, let's go back in time, is crop. See how we have 3 options right here? So we have, that was trim. The next one is crop. So what crop is going to do, let me just give an example here, is I'm going to move this box so that it's just that space there. See how I can readjust it? When I hit done, watch what happens. See how it did that? It got rid of everything and it made it take up the entire screen. Undo. The last one there under crop is Ken Burns. Okay, Ken Burns, it means the exact same thing that it does in iMovie. So Ken Burns is more traditionally used in photos, and what you're going to do is you're going to start at like one part of the photo and you're going to slowly move to another. Let me just grab a photo real quick here, folks, so I can show you a better example of this. Photos. Let me go into, this is just one particular album. Okay, let's go into this one here. I'll just use this shot right here. Okay. So I'm going to go into it, crop, Ken Burns, okay? So what I'm going to do is I have 2 boxes here. The green box that you see here that's on kind of the right-hand side, that is start, and red is end. Now you can move either of these boxes, okay? So, and you can also adjust, how tight they are. So I'm going to, for this, I'm going to start the shot relatively close to the church, and I'm going to do that by grabbing the corner. I'm just going to drag. I'm just kind of repositioning it so I have my shot, okay, like there. And then for my end shot, I'm going to click out here in the red box. I'm going to just shrink this a little bit. And one of the key things to make the Ken Burns effect look good is you don't want it to be too dramatic, okay? It really doesn't take much for you to get the effect. So let's go just maybe a tad more. That might even actually be a little bit too dramatic. Now, here's the thing. If you want this to be less dramatic, there's 2 ways to change this up. You can either make the difference between these 2 boxes less, or you can increase the time of the shot. Okay? So, for example, if I hit done, keep in mind, what did we set our default to be? 5 seconds, right? So it takes 5 seconds to go from here. Let's hit play. Now, it's a little bit blurry because it hasn't rendered it yet, and that's the end. Okay? But the other way that we could make this work is we can simply drag out that clip. Remember, we're going to click inside the clip, grab right here, and we're going to drag to the right. Okay? So now it's going to take even longer to go from here to here. So watch what happens when I play it now. Forgive me, I know it is a little blurry. By the way, on that note, one thing you will notice if you're dealing with 4K footage is that when you're editing and you're playing, it's going to be a little blurry. But that's just so that it can move quickly and keep up with you. When you're done, it'll look, crystal clear. So that's the Ken Burns effect. Now, the other option that we have here is distort, okay? Let me give you an example where I use distort, which is when doing the Tech Talk America videos. If you've seen me on camera and there's like a monitor behind me, there's no actual monitor behind me. What we've done is we placed a graphic there of a monitor, and then we place another image inside of it. That image is not, the look of that monitor is not necessarily a perfect rectangle, okay? So what you can do with this is you can kind of adjust it a little bit. Okay, you create these little distortions, and you can grab any corner that you want, and so you can kind of imagine here what I'm envisioning. So if I want it to look like a monitor in the background, I need to scale this probably down first. This could ultimately be, see what it's doing here. It actually even looks like you're dealing with 3 dimensions. You're not, but it looks like it. So if I was on camera right here, this is the monitor behind me. See, it kind of, you don't really think about it, but that's not a perfect rectangle, okay? It just looks like it. It is because it's inside of a monitor and we associate it that way. One of the things that you'll find as you're going through and creating your video is you may have some footage that is not so stable and could use a little bit of balancing. There is a free way to do this, and there's a much better way to do this, which involves a special piece of software, which is going to be covered in the advanced class, which comes out in April of 2017. So if you just need some basic stabilization, I know this shot is actually okay, but work with me, folks. Okay, you're going to click on your clip, go over here to the inspector, and you'll see right here we have one checkbox. Just click it, and it will stabilize it. This does take a little bit of time for your computer to process this because it's got to analyze it first, and then it's got to apply it and render it. So it'll take potentially a minute or two depending on how fast your computer is. The next thing I want to show you folks is how to record a voiceover. And for those of you who are curious, the microphone that I'm using right now, which by the way for this particular clip may sound a bit off, but it's the same microphone I've used for the rest of this class. This is the Blue Snowball. The audio company is called Blue. The name of the product is called the Snowball. They do make different models of it now. So the very specific one that I recommend, same one that I use, you will find a link to that in that PDF guide. So in order to record a voiceover, all you need to do is go up here into the window menu, and we're going to go into Record Voiceover. So from here, we get a little pop-up window. You can see my voice showing up there. Hello, hello. Okay, popping up there. The little red button here is going to obviously record it. If you would like to name your audio clip, you can call it whatever you want. So I'll just call it voiceover. Okay, and these settings here are going to change based on if you are using headphones. And my advice is I would use headphones because most people who are doing voiceover work tend to better work on their modulation when they can hear themselves through headphones. So if you're going to do that, I would, the settings will match that. Okay, so you'd want your monitor, you'd want your monitor to be on, but I'm not going to do that right now because it's going to sound really, really weird. You're going to count down to record. That just means it's going to give you a 3, 2, 1 before you record. You'd probably want to uncheck this if you are wearing headphones. Okay, and what you're going to do is you're going to basically, sorry, I should stop moving my cursor. You're going to move the playhead to the part of the project where you want it to actually record. When you hit record, it's going to rewind 3 seconds, and then you can start your voiceover. And just to show you very quickly how it looks. Up, up, and away. That was stupid, I know. So now if I play it back, you'll hear. You'll see, by the way, the file's right here. This is the file for voiceover. So you couldn't really hear it that well because the music is a little bit too loud, which brings us to the next part. Next part I want to show you folks is how to basically make tweaks to the audio because you don't want to, have it just suddenly jump up and down. You want it to smoothly transition, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually mute my speakers right now because this is going to get to be very, very hard to edit later on. So I'm going to just basically make this part of the clip. Let's zoom in a little bit. I'm going to make it, see how it kind of crescendos here? I'm going to make it go down a little bit, okay? Is that decrescendo, I believe, if I remember my terminology. So what we're going to do is we are going to basically tell the computer over a course of so many frames to make this kind of a transition. And the way we do this is we use keyframes. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with the point where it's going to start to change. So let's just choose right here, okay? So we're going to click on the clip, okay? And you'll notice that right now over here at the top right corner, I have the inspector open, and here at the very top it says volume. See this little diamond shaped icon? That is a keyframe. So currently we're at 3 decibels. So we're going to mark that moment in time. Now what we're going to do is we're going to fast forward. How long do we want it to take to transition from its current volume to its new volume? So let me just kind of go. Usually with audio, you're going to do something like, it's a couple of seconds, okay? So we'll do right there, okay? So now we're going to click inside once again, and we're going to hit another keyframe. But what we're going to do now is we're going to take this little lever right here, and we're going to lower it. And if you look at the timeline, you'll see that we're creating a curve, okay? See right there? See how it's now slanted down? Or if I slant up, okay? So this is just what you can do is as you go through your project, as you're trying to kind of normalize everything, you can find those key moments where you need to give it a little bit of a boost or lower it, and you're just going to go through and keyframe the whole thing. So you just, the process is keyframe, move to where you want it to end, hit keyframe again, and then transition the volume. There are basically 2 different ways that you can add titles to your project, and I'm going to show you the real simple ones that come with Final Cut. Once again, if you want to get into like some really amazing 3D graphic text, that's where part 2 of this class is going to come in handy. So to get into titles, we're going to go over here to the top left, and it's right here, okay? So here we have titles, and there's also another thing here called generators. It may look like this if you have the arrows here that are not opened up. So let's open up titles. And you'll see here we have all these different types of categories. We do have 3D ones. These are the basic 3D ones that come with your Mac. So you can do, or come with Final Cut rather, I should say. So if I play these, you can kind of see a little bit of what they look like. So if I hit spacebar, okay, tumbles in, it tumbles out, okay? That'd be an example of one. And these, you know, if you've never seen this stuff, this is probably pretty cool to you. But there are ways to take this to a significantly more professional level. That's part 2. So I'm going to go right here into build in and build out. These are the real simple ones. And you can apply these 2 different ways. You can either apply them to footage, or you can apply them to like a black background, something like that. So let's say, for example, let's say for the opening here, I'm going to put the date. Okay, I'm going to have it, maybe put it at the bottom, or let's say the top right corner, okay? So for this, what I would probably do is I would go in here and I would just grab, I usually just tend to grab custom, something like that. It's very, very simple. And you can drag it from here on top of your clip, and it's represented by that purple bar. Now, you guessed it, if you want to make this longer or shorter, you can grab either side. You can drag it out to make it longer, pull it in to make it shorter, whatever you want, okay? So now what I can do is I can click on that text, okay? And now if I want to change what text, you can't really see it, but it is actually there in the middle. We need to go into the inspector, which we closed just a minute ago. Once again, right up here. Okay, so now we can type in, put in whatever text we want. If I remember correctly, this was on January 6, 2017. Okay, and all my different options here for font, color, all that stuff, those are all going to be below. This is scrollable, by the way. So if you're going to make changes to your font, you want to make sure it's highlighted. And we can change it from Horrible Helvetica to something a little bit more interesting. By the way, if you're going to be putting text into your project, if I may give a slight recommendation, we have a free, very short class on how to get extra fonts for your Mac. You might want to consider checking that out. I'll try to remember to put a link to that in the PDF guide. Okay, so I'll just use this one here, June Gull. And you can't really see it because it's white, right? So we're going to make some adjustments to that. But before we do that, first thing we want to figure out is the size. So the size, if we drag it to the right, it gets larger, left smaller. That looks about right there. Okay. these are just kind of your spacing options, and you can actually move this, so you can move it anywhere you want. This is one of the very, very big differences between iMovie and Final Cut Pro. With iMovie, it's like if you want to put your text in the top right corner, good luck. It's very, very limited, whereas with Final Cut Pro, you can totally customize this. Actually, let me just show you how to do it right now. So what you're going to do is you're going to click right here, and you're going to drag it up to the top right. The other way that you can do this if you want is you can actually access transform right over here and do the exact same thing, because the text is essentially a layer. So you can see I can move this text wherever I want it. Okay, so I'm going to move it right up there towards the top right. Now we're going to scroll down a little bit more. We're going to deal with the color. The color is called the face, and so we have it checked because you can see it. We're going to go over here to the right where it says show. Voila, there is our color. So let's change it over to black. Okay, or actually the other thing we can do instead, if we want, leave it white, and let's just scroll down a little bit more here, and let's just add a drop shadow. So that just kind of adds this little, makes it a little bit easier to read. Now if you want to tweak that shadow, make it a little bit easier to read, okay, we can once again just put the cursor to the right here and click on show, and we can change the distance. So the more distance you have, a little bit easier it's going to be to read that. Okay, just like that. Now the other way that you can add text is you can also add it over either like a black background or whatever other layer that you want. So I want to show you how to do that too. So to do that, let's do something a little bit more interesting. Not really interesting, just a little different. Let's use this four corners one here, okay? So you can put your cursor over and you can kind of get an idea of how it's going to look, okay? So if you want to do this and not have it be over footage, when you go to bring it into your project, instead of bring it up top, you can bring it into your storyline. And so now you can see here it's over a black background. What if you don't want a black background? What if you want something a little bit different? Okay, there's another way to do it too. So right underneath here where we have titles, we have something called generators. These are the ones that come with your Mac, okay? Or come with, I keep saying that, come with Final Cut. So we have some interesting ones here like clouds and counting, curtains, okay? Whatever you want. So you can also, by the way, just drag in an image if you prefer of a color or whatever you want. So if you go through generators here, you'll see we have some that are kind of animated like underwater. I just call this the Finding Nemo layer, okay? Let's just do that for fun. But you can also just do basic colors, and you can change these all. You can change them around using the inspector, okay? So let's just do underwater, under the sea. We're going to drag that and drop it into our storyline because this is going to be the overall footage. And then if we want our text to go over that, we just simply, where did it go? We were using, let's just use, where did it go? Oh, we were under built-in, that's why. There it is, four corners. So now we can take that, we can drop it on top of that, and you'll see now we have a layer. Okay, just like that. Now, if you are looking for a little bit more interesting layers than what come with Final Cut Pro, there is another place. It's part of the same company that is behind Audio Jungle that I'll give you a link to as well. And these are just kind of, once again, these just kind of backgrounds that you can use. They're pretty handy to have on your computer if you really get into editing. Now, when you're done with your project, there's several different things that you can do with it, of course. What I would tend to recommend that you do is no matter where you're sending this, whether you're sending it to YouTube or Facebook, export one master copy at full resolution, just so that if you ever need it, you've got it. So to export, you can go to File, and it's right here under Share. Sorry, I always say export because that's what they always used to call it. Now it's Share. So here we do have a way to go straight to a DVD. We're not going to go over that. If you want to put on DVD, my advice is probably, consider checking out third-party software like Toast. We have a class on it. I'll put a link in the description, or in the PDF rather. Master file, though, here is what I would recommend that you do. And here's the thing. You can always go from a master file to Facebook, YouTube, or Vimeo, okay? It's just probably the better way to do it. So from here, we're going to create the name of our project. So this is going to be the name of the file when you're done. A little trick for those of you who are going to be putting this on Facebook or on YouTube. Make sure you put in a good title. You want to make sure that the title matches the project. Settings, okay? So this is where you can change the kind of codec that you're using. For most of you, I just say use the source one, whatever that is. Okay, and when you're done, hit next. One thing I will tell you, by the way, see this, it thinks this is going to be 10.3 gigabytes. This is never, ever correct, ever. It's usually a fraction of that. If you ever need to shrink down your video, there's a free piece of software. It's called Handbrake, and it's the website address is handbrake.fr. It's very, very handy for that kind of operation. If you need to make your video smaller, that is one way to do it. And hit next, and you're going to basically just point it to where you want it to send your footage, and you are done. Well, folks, that about does it for us for today. I hope you've enjoyed this class. Please feel free to leave us comments in the section below. And if you haven't already done so, I hope you'll consider subscribing to our little channel here on the YouTubes. You can do that by clicking on the little logo that just appeared on your screen. And be sure to check out our other classes. We've got about 400 plus classes now available. So you can find those all either on our YouTube channel or on our website at techtalkamerica.com. Thanks for watching, everyone. Class dismissed.